Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Cut and Splice. This is Matt.
This is Gil.
And this is Jason.
So, this time around, we are going to be talking about James Gray's 2016 film, The Lost City of Z. This is a film that follows the true life story of Percy Fawcett, a British explorer and military man who was tasked with exploring the Amazon in the early 20th century. He became convinced that there was a lost city, as the title implies, uh, of an advanced civilization that predated, rather, uh, possibly even the British Empire, and uh, the story follows his his adventures and the political strife that his ideas created in the kingdom, and also dealt briefly, but also I think rather well, with the turmoil of the First World War. Uh, I highly recommended this film as something that flew under the radar to my fellow co-hosts, and I will open the floor to them to uh, either build this movie up or tear it apart, or both. Uh, so, yeah, you guys go ahead.
Yeah, I think there were several times over the course of the podcast that this was brought up in different contexts. One time was the Paddington's episode.
Yeah.
And I think there was one more time before that. And then James Gray definitely came up several times, especially in the context of also Ad Astra that I did see before I saw The Lost City of Z. And yeah, so that's one of the reasons. But one thing I was going to say about The Lost City of Z, for one thing, it's a tough title. Tough. First of all, the duh. I don't know, get all these movies with the duh. I think Lost City of Z can work just fine, and also, wouldn't it be based on once you see the movie? Shouldn't it be The Lost City of Z? Because that's really what it's called.
Yeah, but that's how British people say the letter Z.
Oh, so it's a British accent thing, not a.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
so
like it is Lost City of Z. We're just saying Z because we're American, I guess. I don't know. I was going to start saying Z until Matt said Z.
Yeah. Actually, from now on, we should probably refer to it as Z. I actually was about to say Z myself, and then for some reason I blurted out Z because I'm an idiot American. And
No,
now we're just talking about it too much. Now we're making it.
Right.
Now we're like reading too much into it.
No, but I am curious because obviously I'm not a native speaker. Don't you ever refer to that letter as Z? It's always Z.
We don't, but they do.
I see. So Americans don't say Z; they always say Z.
Yeah.
Okay, because I recall growing up that basically they're interchangeable. Like you can say Z and you can say Z. It's kind of like 0 and O.
I think you could say Z, but I think in America, it's not like it'd be wrong. I just think you're going to get a lot of people confused. Like where 0 and what did you say?
Oh.
Oh, well, that's more like a letter as opposed to a number. But anyway, forget that example.
But you know that like you. I'm trying to think. There's no other letter with that example, but I'm talking about something that you can say in two different ways.
I could be wrong. I'm actually pretty certain that the Australians say Z as well.
Yeah, no, but
I'm
I will
that
say
off of a movie I have.
I think Z would have been a better title because then I don't know why the Z, like, but because maybe because I have bad connotation with World War Z.
Totally unrelated films, but
yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. It was just it was a bit of a mess. Literally,
I mean, just to clarify, if this wasn't already clear, I mean, I think the movie is called Lost City or The Lost City of Z. It's just that a lot of people in America would say it Z.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Just
now
like
that that tirade
I
is
bet
over.
you, just like you brought it up. So I bet you that if we were walking around the streets somewhere in the UK and we were talking about Brad Pitt movies, somebody would say World War Z. They probably wouldn't say World War Z.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good point. So
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just the way that they say the name of that letter.
yeah. No, so now that we got that out of the way, so I know Matt highly recommended this movie. Where did you fall, Jason, as far as the recommendation? Because I know you've discussed this also in the context of comparing it to Ad Astra and that they're almost
Right.
equal.
Matt told me to watch this movie like a year or two ago, and I didn't really have any. I think I wanted to see it when it first came out just because it looked interesting. At the time, I did not know who. How do you say this guy's name? Charlie Hunnam?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I did not know who he was. I'd seen him in. I hadn't even seen. I don't know. I think I might have seen Pacific Rim. Obviously, I saw Children of Men, but I don't think he has a big part in that really. I didn't know who he was when this movie came out. It was just so. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think I knew him from Triple Frontier. That's about it. So like, this was about 3 years ago or something. But anyway, yeah, I didn't know him that well, and I think Matt and I were having a conversation about Robert Pattinson because this was right around the point where it was like, oh, maybe this guy is not total trash. And then Matt was like, you got to see this movie. He's great. And I was like, all right, I'll check it out. And so, yeah, I watched it and I agreed with him. Robert Pattinson's very good in it. And that was kind of like probably the first two movies I saw with this Charlie Hunnam guy. And since then, he's just been making really good movies for the most part. But as far as my takeaway on the movie itself, um, I I think I remember telling Matt that I definitely didn't love it as much as he did, but I really liked the ending. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. It's I just I don't know. I know we're not at that point yet, but I'd say it's like a very strong 7.
Hmm. Yeah, and in the Paddingtons episode, you the way you described the ending is like, and I got to the ending and it was like, oh, I think it was something along those
Yeah.
lines. Like,
So
that I get it. Yeah, I guess it has to be
yeah,
that. Yeah.
I don't
Don't know
want
if you
to.
were
I mean,
like that you were disappointed, but then you
yeah,
understood.
it's like it's hard to talk about without going into spoilers, obviously, because we're talking about the end of the movie. But
Yeah.
how can I say this? It's kind of like, um, well, it's got a very kind of bittersweet ending, and I like the movie a lot. I like the ending a lot, but uh, I I think I'm just a little bit less of a cinematic masochist than Matt is because I like movies with happy endings.
Definitely.
And Matt has said on this podcast that he just like judges his movies by how much it makes him feel like trash at the end of the movie. So, I'm exaggerating, of
Which
course.
is why I'm surprised he didn't like Funny Games.
Very true, very true. No, yeah, I don't know. I'll go into it more when we get into the spoiler section. But yeah, basically, I liked it. I just I don't love it. But it's good. It's a good movie.
Yeah, no, I think and we'll get into the whole Ad Astra comparison and all that. I definitely have less love for Ad Astra. I like this one better. Um, and I don't even know what I rated Ad Astra, but maybe I should check. But yeah, I think it was really well made, and I think that the first half of the movie really flows. Like it's very interesting. Um, then it hits a few false notes somewhere like in the midway point, 2/3 of the
Yeah.
way, and then by the time they go a third time, like once they keep going back and forth, it really feels like a bit too much, even though it makes sense in the context of over the course of a lifetime, essentially. but I don't know why it dragged a bit too long for me at that point. And then the ending, yes, I think the ending really, like you said, bittersweet, and we'll get to it, but it's definitely redeemed it to some extent, even though it's yeah, it's some issues with it as well, but I mean, not really with the movie itself, just story wise, and especially if this is based on real life. But yeah, no, there's something going on there that's almost on a spiritual level is interesting, but I don't think it's fully earned. Much in the same way that we talked about The Fountain.
Mm.
But yeah, but I also I would give it a 7 as well, just not as strong as Jason, maybe closer to a 7.1, 7.2. It's really well made, and a few touches here and there could have elevated to an 8. But yeah, I would say around a 7.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is the way that um, I can honestly see that the way that I've talked about this movie in the past might lead people to think that I think that this is like one of the greatest films ever made, and that's not where I stand. I think it's more of like a a 7.5 to maybe just short of an 8 for me. Uh,
Wait, real quick. So,
Yeah,
would it be safe to say that you like Ad Astra more?
yes.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because, like you just said, the way you've talked about it in the past, I was like 7. What? I was expecting you to be like 9 or something.
Oh wait, so
Yeah,
you did rate this one 7?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm Matt.
seven
No,
and a
no, yeah,
half.
that's what he
Yeah,
said.
you should
Yeah.
just said 7.5. Oh, okay, cool. Wow, that's yeah. Now I did check Ad Astra, and I also gave it a 7. So I don't dislike either of those movies, but I do feel like Lost City of Z I had less issues with.
All right, fair enough.
Um,
Yeah,
Gil, have you seen We Own the Night or any of his other films?
I don't believe so, but I'll give you my quick impression of just James Gray. I mean, to me,
Yes,
it
please.
seems like because there was the reason why Ad Astra maybe disappointed me more than this one is because of expectation, is because I think I listened to a podcast with him being interviewed. I think the DGA something. I don't know why, because sometimes there's spoilers in those, but but because they always are very complimentary to the director and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things, and I was like, oh, this was a gorgeous movie and this and that, and then Matt also like was really into it and I think posted
Sure.
stuff about it. So then I watched
mhm.
the movie, and there's nothing extraordinary about it, so maybe it just brought it down a notch, almost like spitefully so. But then with this one, my expectations were lower. And to me, the impression that I get about him is that he's not as deep as he thinks he is. He's kind of like a slightly improved, or at least like a slightly spiritual version of Edward Zwick. You know, that
Oh,
that that kind of a
interesting.
thing. Like the classic American filmmaker that says like, oh, I'm interesting. Let me do a movie about a British guy going to South America to, reconnect with the indigenous people and be all enlightened and stuff. And it just, and it's not all the way there. It's not a home run. Like it's well intended, but it just doesn't hit all the right spots. And then the same thing with Ad Astra, um, which I think is the only other movie of his I saw. He's like, oh, let me make this, 2001 inspired sort of like meditation in space, but I'll do it my own way. I'm not going to even try to imitate 2001, but there's not a lot of meditation there. It's that's what I'm saying, and I don't know maybe if I'm misreading his movies, but it seems to me like he's going for this, but he's just not hitting it. Like he's and again, like we always try to say here, we're just armchair bullshitting, and these are super talented people, and I wish that I had the career he has, but But that's my impression as far from a critical standpoint that he maybe is even overreaching for, what his talent is.
He's reaching for the stars.
Yeah, which
Oh
is good.
my.
I'm not
Oh my
opposed to it.
God.
Like, I mean, give it a swing, give it a try. That's better than not making a movie.
to,
But
to anybody who just heard Matt say that, if you haven't watched the movie yet, you'll get why that was funny when you
is it in Lost City of Z or is
Yeah.
No, Ad Astra.
well, both
Okay.
really, but mostly Lost City of Z.
So yeah, I guess Jason. So what was the before we get into spoilers, or I guess we could get into them, but what was the connection you saw between the movies as far as the similarity?
Let's talk about spoilers. Let's go ahead
Okay,
and do that,
getting into
because
spoilers. Okay.
oh, actually, in fact, right before we do that, just so we have one last thing to talk about, because I've only seen 3 of his movies, and as I said before we got on here, I almost wish I could have just rewatched We Own the Night, which was the first film of his I saw. I I really want to reiterate what Gil just said about, I don't want to sound like I'm talking trash here, because I think this guy is very talented, but um, over the last 2 or 3 years, Matt and I have had numerous conversations about this guy, James Gray. And I remember asking him at one point, what movies has this guy seen? Like, or made, I mean, what, like, is there anything else I would have seen? And he was like, well, Ad Astra and Lost City of Z. And he's like, there's that movie We Own the Night. And I was just like, We Own the Night. I've seen that. What the heck is that movie again? And he starts describing it, and I was like, oh yeah, that like totally forgettable movie with a great cast. It's got like Marky Mark and Robert Duvall and Joaquin Phoenix is in it. He's amazing, but as always. But like, man, I went and saw that opening weekend, and I was like so incredibly underwhelmed. I was so let down by this movie. And right now, before we saw started this podcast, I went on YouTube and watched a trailer for it, and I was like, "This looks outstanding. I need to watch this movie again." Or else maybe it's just one of the greatest trailers ever made. I don't know, but I don't want to I don't want to speculate too much. I just was like, "Man, this looks like a really good movie in the trailer, so I should give it another go, or something." But if I had to rank his movies, I would go Ad Astra just a tiny bit over Lost City of Z, and then I'd put We Own the Night below that.
I think The Immigrant is number 3 for. Well, I also, I think I'm the only person on the in this conversation who's seen Armageddon Time at this point. But that's actually a really solid film. There were a couple of moments that I kind of scoffed at, but it was a. Uh,
Oh, that's his new movie.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of felt like James Gray's like version of Belfast, only it just isn't as good as Belfast. It's a solid movie. Actually, that's the funny thing about James Gray is that in general, I've seen most of his movies that his movies do tend to fall into the it's solid. It's not. I mean, he very rarely hits it out of the park, even by my standards. I mean, or in my opinion, my standards are really high. It's just my opinions are different from a lot of people's.
Well, I
But
mean, I will say during the Paddingtons episode, you said that Lost City of Z and
Ad Astra.
Ad Astra were 2 of the best 20 movies in the 21st century, or like top 20.
Yeah, it was high praise. It was
That's
very
high praise.
I
So,
scoffed
yeah,
at it myself.
yeah, yeah. Upon revisiting, I might dial that back with Lost City of Z. I'm not going to dial that back with Ad Astra.
okay,
All right. So moving
Okay.
on.
All right.
spoilers.
Remind me again.
So mostly just the comparison between the two.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we're just gonna literally talk about these movies, so as we kind of touched on a while back when we were talking about something, and these movies came up, I do think that Ad Astra, that it's accurate to describe it as kind of like an Apocalypse Now in space kind of
Hmm.
thing. Whereas
Yeah.
this
Definitely.
movie, I would definitely not say that about. This movie is not about a guy trying to find another guy, playing a dude who's playing another. No, no, I'm just kidding. But it's not at all the same kind of plot. But the reason I compare the two of them is because, for one thing, I found the movies to be very compelling and very watchable, but also not particularly thrilling or interesting all the way throughout the film, if that makes sense. Like simultaneously enjoyable, but also I would never say boring, but just like so yeah, you've got let's just look at them. You got Lost City of Zed. This guy's going on adventures. He's going on discovery adventures. He's trying to find a lost civilization. That's stuff happening on screen, but he's not really achieving much. He keeps coming back, getting closer and closer to finding them and not really succeeding. Things keep getting in his way. Things keep, problems happening, whatever. And then Ad Astra, certainly things are happening. This guy's like, in orbit and he's like falling down to Earth. And then like he goes to the moon and there's that awesome sequence there. And all the Mars, I think, right? Or something like that. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I
Yeah,
saw
it's
it.
Mars.
The
Yeah.
sequence of adventures he goes on, but really in a weird sort of way, it's almost like just like one thing after another. And yes, he's constantly getting closer and closer to his goal at what I believe was the outside of the solar system or something like that, just at the edge or something.
At Neptune.
Neptune. Well, that's pretty darn close. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yes, you see the progression of where he's going, the journey and everything, but in a weird sort of way, maybe I'm just describing this wrong, but in both movies, I feel like you don't have a whole lot happening really, even though a lot of stuff is happening. It's just not all that satisfying to me as I'm watching it. But in both cases, um, you get to the end of the movie, and the last 5 minutes of the movie really saved it for me in a big way. In fact, just throwing this out there, that might be a fun topic to talk about at some point. Movies that are like totally saved by a really awesome ending.
So the way I see it, I mean, again, there are a lot of very, very key differences, but I mean, obviously the low hanging fruit, the obvious comparison is that they're both about exploration in their own ways.
Sure, sure.
Duh, duh, you can see that from the trailers, but in the end, both of them are movies that not only that not only deprive you of the explorers finding what they were seeking. In neither movie is it at least definitive that the explorer ever finds what he's looking for, uh, or that this whole expedition actually materialized into anything. But but it, the strength of both of the endings is that in in very different ways, but in I think uh, in a very similar treatment, they kind of illustrate the satisfaction in the journey, even when it could be argued that you ultimately failed, or that you ultimately didn't find what you were looking for, and actually, I think the element that was missing in Lost City of Z that was there at Astra, and I think James, I wouldn't be surprised if James Gray made Lost City of Z and then decided to make Ad Astra just as kind of like a commentary on certain things that he just found to be like lacking aspects of Percy Fawcett's story, uh, and like
To comment on.
right, right, and I mean, like with Ad Astra, there was such a clear perspective of searching, of exploration as a means of escape. And rather than realizing what you have that's right in front of you, you go searching for something that may or may not be there. Uh, Whereas, the Lost City of Z definitely spent a lot of time talking about how Percy Fawcett had such a strained relationship with his home and his family, uh, because he was away for so long. And surely enough, when he finally brings his family along, he gets Spider-Man killed. Uh, but
Well,
uh,
Matt, what I was
yeah,
going to say, and tell me if this plays into what you're
okay,
talking about, because I feel like it does. It just seems to me, to be a little more simple and precise with answering
yeah,
Gil's question. It seems to me that in both cases, the big gut punch, the big, you know, catharsis at the end of the film is that, like kind of what Matt said. Okay, things didn't work out the way you thought they were going to, but look at what look on the bright side. Look at what you gained, kind of thing. Because in Lost City of Z, there's that beautiful. I don't know if I'd call it a monologue, but Charlie Hunnam is talking to Spider-Man, and he says, he's you could see that his son is distraught, and they're about to die basically, and he says, look, you know, uh, we went on this journey and we did this thing and we've been able to explore and we've seen things that nobody else, a lot of people can't even dream of, and that's valuable. There's something about that, there's now that's debatable, but I mean that's pretty much the message he's trying to get across. And then similarly, what Tommy Lee Jones, I think, right?
yeah,
At the end of that one, it's when he has to tell his father,
yeah,
like, hey, you didn't. I think it was he looking for intelligent life, right?
yeah. That's the best scene in the whole movie.
It is
Yeah,
by far, but yeah,
yeah,
but he
yeah,
he basically breaks it down for him and says, like, your life was not a waste just because you didn't find intelligent life. You gain, we as a society gained a lot because of what you did here, and kind of in a way showing that there isn't any, or something like that, something to that effect.
yeah,
But the
right,
the whole point, regardless of that, if that's exactly what they said or not, the point being that they had that very similar way of handling that last moment in the movie. And
yeah,
even though they're very different movies, that I thought was very similar about the two of them. And yeah, so that's how I kind of saw the two of them as being linked, was because of that really interesting ending that was so similar and yet different at the same time.
Yeah. Also, I guess Batman got spared because he didn't join them in the jungle the third time.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
Bruce Wayne.
but Robert the Bruce did, right?
Yeah. Well, he survived. No, he came
He
back.
survived. He made, but he had a hell of a time.
yeah,
Yeah.
But he was older than them. It's expected. He can't. You can't expect him to keep up with them.
Yeah, but in any case, yeah, no, and I will say Robert Pattinson was really good in it. Like it was when he started, like I guess trying to be invisible, not being himself and stuff. The whole beard and everything.
He was good,
Um,
right?
yeah, no,
yeah,
he's good. He was probably the best part of the movie for me personally, and also to me the one of the better scenes in that movie is when he refuses to go back, when he tells him like, well, listen, I have a wife and kid.
Yeah.
Because basically,
yeah,
most people would have that priority and it would conflict. And then there's the other aspect of it that his wife wanted to be helpful and an explorer as well, but she couldn't be because of the whole, having to care for the home and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So there's that aspect. Although I felt like that was one of parts of the movie that I wasn't crazy about, is when he tells, like, she tells him, like, you think we're equal, but then we're not equal all the way, and and he tries to rationalize it, but it's not really a good argument. And yes, the fact that he gives his son that bullshit explanation, it's like, yeah, dude, but you got to go there 3 times and you're older. He got his whole life ahead of him, and you basically put this germ in after abandoning him his entire childhood. You put this germ of exploration in him, and you killed him the first time you go there. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that
It
the
sounds like
way.
you're saying it's a bad thing.
No, that's the thing. It's not a bad thing if you explain it the right way. Because I think his explanation in the end of saying, like, look at what we did, like, most people would dare and, like, not dare to. Yes, but that was not just it. Yeah, if the movie try to bring home the point more, that by doing what they did, and bringing all this attention to this lost city, this lost civilization, and the fact that the indigenous people are not savages and they're sophisticated, this whole anti-racism thing, that there's value to all these cultures, and we should really change our ways and be more enlightened. I felt like, even though it was really on the nose when he was telling that to the rest of the geographical society, or whatever the group of people that he was constantly going back to, um it felt like that point wasn't made in the end, is that's the value, apart from the journey being the reward part that you mentioned, that life is just a journey, and whether it's a very short-lived life or a longer lived life, as long as you're doing what you want to be doing, then no regrets. That's if there was more of that, and then putting the value into you know um showing that these cultures have value, all these things, I think would have made for a better movie. And then, of course, the spiritual aspect of it, that's the part I was talking about, is that I think with Ad Astra as well, is that both of these movies are about fathers and sons.
Yeah.
Less so a Lost City of Zed, because he's mostly abandoned. I guess both sons are abandoned in both movies, and I didn't feel like in both of them, I didn't feel like that it culminated with anything really gut punch, like, as far as those relationship. Like, it seems like Tom Holland basically, okay, I'm old enough, so if you take me with you, I'll forgive you for abandoning me all these years. It just wasn't there wasn't much there of, like, there was nothing meaty about it, that there's no revelation about it. It's like, oh, I guess my son is old enough so he can go. And then the mom is, like, now old and she can suck it because she never got to go, but at least, like, she's nice enough to allow the son to go, and she's like, oh, you have the bug in you. I feel bad for her more than anybody else. I mean, to me, the tragedy of the movie is her life. But yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you got. I'm just rambling
I
on, but
was just gonna say that I don't disagree with any particular point that you're saying. I just think you have a really negative perspective on it. But like, I would feel really bad for the wife, the mother. But I love that part at the end where it flashes as he's, like, being carried. They flash back to when she's reading that letter from when that she wrote, thinking she was going to die in childbirth, you know, and, like, with her dying words, basically, or what would have been her dying words if she had died, telling him that she's so proud of him, and that she knows they're going to have a son, and that her dying wish is that he instills the sense of adventure and curiosity and exploration into their son, because that's what makes him so great, and that's what makes her love him, and stuff like that. So, I mean, that was a really, I totally agree with you saying. It's tragic. It is
Yeah,
just
and you know what?
downright tragic. But
And
I
I
mean,
did forget. I forgot that she said that. I remember the scene with the letter, but I forgot that that's what she said there. So, and that's a good plot point. That's good. Like that's good screenwriting. But I didn't feel like he really did much to instill that in his son. I think his son mostly begrudgingly got it based on just waiting for his dad to come back and knowing that he's an explorer. But he did.
Yeah.
There was no scenes when he comes back with the periods that he's back home where he tries to gain, Spider-Man's, acceptance
Yeah.
through getting him involved with,
Uh,
how do
yeah,
you use a compass? How do you do this? How do you survive in the wild? Like he doesn't get into that. They don't do that stuff. He just basically, I'm old enough, so I guess I'm an explorer now.
I mean, you can argue that there weren't enough scenes, but I mean, there was certainly like giving his son artifacts from his journeys, and there were definitely. A lot of it happened off screen, but in a couple lines of dialogue, hey, go do this, and go practice doing this. Like there was that in the movie. They just didn't have like a massive montage of Tom Holland training to be like the Rocky of Amazonia or something.
So
I
it could be
mean,
that I'm
Gil,
forgetting it. I guess there were some scenes. Yeah.
well,
yeah.
Gil, I
So
agree with you about what feels like is missing from the movie. But in a lot of ways, what you described is kind of the reason why I sort of like Ad Astra a little bit more. Um, because I think Ad Astra is visually stunning in scenes. I think that moon scene with the moon rovers is incredible. But overall, it just feels like this real slow burn, kind of weird build to get to the ending. But the things that you said were kind of weak, like you kind of said like, oh, if they had kind of shown this or that, it would have made that message a little stronger at the end. It would have showed like they really accomplished something more. Well, I feel like in Ad Astra, they really through the dialogue between Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones, I really feel like you get a sense that they did accomplish something, that Tommy Lee Jones accomplished something great. And it just feels like such a successful uh feeling at the end of that movie, especially after such a arduous journey to get to it. But yeah, in a weird sort of way, that's how I felt a little stronger about that one.
Yeah,
That's
and I did read recently that with the Armageddon time coming out, that that he wasn't happy with Ad Astra, James Gray. Like he said that it was kind of taken from him in the edit, and there's a few things that he would have done differently.
no,
Um,
he said that he never wanted any of the voiceover, and that was actually one of the biggest things that bothered me about Ad Astra.
ah,
uh,
um,
uh,
yeah, so I mean, that's one thing, but it is interesting, the theory about him correcting sort of like the end of Lost City of Zed with by saying like this was based on a real event, so let me try to correct it by having an ending in this other movie in space. But I do like the fact that he doesn't find the lost city, and that it's only after, like in the epilogue, that you see that he was right all along. There's something about that that's interesting, but I don't feel like that was in the movie. Like that's what I feel like, and maybe this is what I feel about Ad Astra too. Is I feel like there's good stuff in it that is not earned. That if it was set up all the way that he just wasn't destined to find the city, but it's okay because the journey is the reward. You don't just throw that in the last line of the movie. You need to build towards that. The little things like that. Same thing with the son. Like I felt like there's not too much of a build to having him go with them. And in Ad Astra too, and I guess we're not trying to make this too much of a comparison episode, but it just feels like he's his dad is there, and he's trying to get there, and then he gets there, and his dad doesn't care, and his dad hasn't found aliens. I don't know. It's like end, but I feel like there's nothing that's being earned or built up to, and maybe I missed something, but I feel like all this guy does is just shoot scenes fairly well. He makes them look good. He's got a vision, but it's a bit soulless. I don't know.
Um, I, I mean, I honestly think I just had a completely different reading of the movie. Uh, I mean, I don't think that it was supposed to be anything about predestination. I mean, I think, or like, well, he was never supposed to get there, but it's all in the journey. I think it's, in a way, I think it's simpler, and in another way, I think it's more complicated. I mean, uh, I mean, Lost City of Z, particularly, I think is actually kind of an interesting uh, way to look into, the whole, if I ever saw further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants, kind of thing, where I, there are so many people who come close and don't get there, but it's because they they devoted their entire life to something and never saw it never saw it themselves, but because they put in the work, the rest of us can stand on their shoulders.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a hell of a thing to devote a 2.5 hour movie to, but
No, it's not. That's a good
I
movie, but this was not it. That's what I'm saying, is that
yeah,
that's a
I'm
very
saying
good
that
point.
I'm saying that it was it.
But where
But
was it? Where was the intention? Where was that set up throughout the movie? He didn't even say it in the end. He said like most people would envy like the adventure we've been on, but he doesn't say by us coming here, even if we didn't make it all the way, that would lead the trail, the path, the breadcrumbs for others to follow. And I assure you, this city will be found. Like, you could have had
I,
so many.
I don't think that's what you tell your son when he's about to die.
No, but it's to say the value is that we got that much closer, and this story doesn't end with us, because this is the story of humanity, of our species, and the story continues, but we got to
Mm.
contribute our part. That's like, that's good stuff. That's good material. Not at least we went on an adventure. Who else goes to the jungle? Like, we got to go to
Yeah.
a jungle. Most people just live in the city their entire lives and just die. It's not as profound as it could have been, is all I'm saying.
I'm
Right.
just gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say real
That's fair.
quickly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say real quickly. I could be wrong, but I love these points being made. But if I had to venture an opinion, I would say that maybe Gil, you're making me laugh so much when you're saying these things. I think Gil is being a little overly critical of the movie, but I feel like Matt is uh is filling in the blanks with his, like, or I guess, how can I say this, that Matt's being a little too forgiving of maybe some of the stuff that might be missing from the movie.
Yeah,
But
no, it's often the case that if there's a certain bias, then you lean into it for
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
uh
I mean, I like them. I didn't rate the movie a 5 or 6. I
no,
like
no,
the
no,
movie.
no.
It's well made, and I think it's a good story to tell. And I like the fact that it was bittersweet in the end. I just felt like it was going for this very moody. They're gonna give them some, poison that's gonna slowly kill. I don't know what they're doing to them, the indigenous people, in the end. But it all looks very spiritual and interesting. And I thought there was gonna be some Northman, hallucinations
Eh,
stuff, and like that would have been great. That would have been so great if they had some sort of hallucination there, and like some trip towards the end that kind of made them realize that, well, life is just but a blink, and what really matters is the human story, the journey, and we got to tell a small part of it, and but none of that was there. It's just none. I don't know. Like we got to go on a safari. That's like, that's like, worth dying for at age 19 or ever how old like his son was.
I think he's only supposed to be like 17, isn't he?
That's just tragic.
Like this isn't like a dentist going on a trophy hunting mission in Africa or something. I mean, oh, we went on a safari. That's such a flippant way to put it. I mean, that's
No, for sure. No, for sure. It's very sad. It is tragic. It's tragic for the mother and for the son. It's not as tragic for the dad. I just feel like he just comes off as a shitty husband and dad. That's all. And maybe that's what the movie should have been. Is the movie's also not critical enough about that about him. Is that it seems like he kind of gets a bit of a pass by the movies. Like, well, he's got this very lofty goal, and he drags his entire family through it. Only they don't get any of the glory. Like his wife doesn't get the glory. His son dies too early. He's kind of a dick. Like when you think about it, like it bothers me about the story. But if this what happened in real life, it's what happened. But it's I get it. You don't want to change what happened by much, but yeah, you could have definitely made this more of like, the mom played her part, the son played his part, and it's all part of the, like what Shakespeare said that, is it Shakespeare? No, it's like, not Shakespeare. It's that poem from Dead Poets Society. That
the Robert Frost, The Road Less
Robert
Traveled.
Frost.
Yeah,
Well, the one about
which
like
Robin
that you may
Williams took
contribute
entirely out of context.
whatever.
But
Yeah, the one where
anyway,
it says like, that the powerful play of life goes on and you may contribute a verse, that we all get to contribute a verse to the human story, and this was his contribution. I just felt like it would have been nice if the point was made in the movie that his wife and his son also made a contribution, and he should have valued it more, and it's tragic that he didn't, and maybe he should have realized it in the end, that like maybe he could have been a better husband, maybe he could have been a better, but there's none of that. He is not redeemed in the end that much. I honestly like feel like, he should have totally like been very like remorseful about that, especially once his son is dying. Not don't diminish the fact that you just killed your son by saying that like, oh, we got to go on an adventure. Say like, I'm sorry. I could have been a better dad. Even in my absence, I could have been a better dad. Could have been a better husband. It's just there's no remorse there. That's what bothers me about the movie. Anyways,
I don't know if I would have wanted it to be his speech at the end to the son
no.
to be any different. I kind of love it the way it is. I agree with you that I think he's a bad father, and I think, and especially by normal standards, I love. I think my favorite thing about this movie is what the mother says, something to the effect of something like that she's happy that he aims for Matt, you kind of paraphrased it earlier. What is it? He says something about his goals, his aspirations are out of his reach or something like that, and how that's how everybody's everyone's aim should be out of their ambitions should be out of their reach.
yeah,
Something like that.
I mean, it's just another way of saying reach exceeding your grasp. But,
Yeah. Oh, that's what. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, just your reach should exceed your grasp. I love that concept. That's really great. It's like if you're doing things right, you should be trying to do stuff that you don't even have a chance of doing. Because I mean, within reason, naturally. I mean, this guy, it wasn't like he was bankrupting his wife or anything. He got a bunch of other people to pay for it. And stuff like that. It wasn't like his family was out on the streets or anything. But I agree. He was an absent father. So but I do like the that in his final scene with the boy and everything, that he's kind of hammering that point home. I think it's a strong part of the movie, but I don't know. I really think that what Gil, what you said earlier, is a stronger criticism of it. That maybe we could have seen a little bit more of Tom Holland becoming the man that he needed to be for the father to accept him as a travel partner, explorer, whatever. And maybe that we could have seen a little bit more of how their journey would have eventually been the first steps to leading other people to find stuff, and I don't know, something of that nature.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I was just kind of thinking, if you know, reach exceeding one's grasp is actually like a serious theme in Lost City of Z and possibly Ad Astra. If Gil and to a certain extent your assessment of James Gray is correct, then James Gray might have been doing 2 movies to actually assess his own career, like, my reach constantly exceeding my grasp.
Huh.
Uh, but
Meta.
but I mean, I think that Ad Astra was where he actually reached far enough, but
Yeah, I guess someday I'll revisit it, for sure. The
I just hope that there's got to be a director's cut at some point where they cut out the voiceover and
it seems like he might want to do it, like he's
Yeah.
interested in doing it. So sometimes if enough time passes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like I'm quickly looking at some of the reviews, and it's funny because the critics kind of liked it. They gave it like a 7.8 Metascore,
Mhm.
which is pretty good. Like it's not
Yeah.
bad for Metascore, and like some of the not so good reviews are, it says like, despite gorgeous cinematography and a strong cast, Lost City of Z is a shallow and overly romantic film that falls into the trap of hero worship. That's a perfect review. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That he's kind of like the man, and is all about him, and it just feels like it's a bit problematic that there's no remorse, that there's no criticism of him. I mean, there's touches of it, but not enough. Everybody's just like, let's all like pull behind the behind the hero, and like, because he's gonna do something special, and we all need to support him in that, even if he abandons us or neglects us. And then like other reviews, I mean, it seems like all the good reviews are mostly like they're just luscious images and like the technical aspect. I really think that's why I'm comparing this guy to Edward Zwick, is technically he's there. He knows how to make a movie. He knows how to shoot it nice and make it look great, and how movies are supposed to look. But he's not, there's nothing about it that's very profound, spiritual. It's all very surface level. That's why the whole shallow thing to me is just a very good assessment. To me, for some reason, like the trickery of good movie making shouldn't be substituted for good storytelling. Is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm reading James Gray's movies like the people in South Park were reading The Tale of Scrody McBooker Balls, but
Huh.
I, I don't know. I think he's a lot deeper than you're giving him credit for, and maybe the Lost City of Z was a little bit more shallow than I originally assessed it, but I mean, I think the reason why Ad Astra was the follow up was because uh, maybe he saw certain blind spots that he had with Lost City of Zed and the um, this whole concept of what drives us to the unknown and what pushes us to and what pushes us to make the sacrifices that we make to, for a chance of discovering something that uh that we may never find. And what is that human, like, why do human beings even do this? Like, why do we even uh go to the stars? Why do we spend billions of dollars, launching rockets into space when, like, we don't know if there's anything out there. We don't know if there's anything useful other than knowledge, and that knowledge might not even be actionable in our day-to-day lives. Why did people abandon their families and travel across the world just in the hope of, uh, in a century or two before Lost City of Zed took place. You're talking about people who did that just to make more accurate maps. I mean, it wasn't even that they were looking for anything particular. It's just, uh, I, I mean, why do we do that? And I think that was what James Gray was exploring with both of those films. And
I think
uh,
that's what you were exploring by watching his movies, but I
uh,
don't think he was actually doing it. That's the thing, is that I'm liking everything you're saying. That's not in the movie. Like, for him to try and make that point in the movie, like, instead of scenes of him being a sharpshooter right in the beginning, and then his son later on is also a sharpshooter, so that's when he realizes that he's a man, that he's good with the gun or something. Like, there needs to be a scene where, maybe he comes back and the son is very anti hanging out with him, but maybe he hangs out with the younger kids and he teaches them something very fascinating about how you discover something, and where you are in the terrain and something, and maybe like Tom Holland is not really there yet. He's not really, like, doesn't want to be with his dad because he's still very resentful, but he catches a glimpse of that enthusiasm, and that's how it grows in him. That's storytelling. That's like developing an idea that this guy is, like, his obsession with mapping terrain and making discoveries is infectious, and so infectious that his wife was willing to dedicate her life to supporting him, and his son is willing to go and die with him in the jungle, like, to just for but where was that infectious element? Like, it was not there. It wasn't there. That just was part of the story that he, in a 2+ hour movie, that he doesn't really put a lot of emphasis on.
I think if I were to sum it up, I would just say that everything that Matt so beautifully described as what is the quality, the benefit, the meat that this movie is striving for and about everything. I think the movie is about those things. I just think it's safe to say that Gil is bringing up some very valid points, and that essentially that those are all great things to make a movie about. I just think that somewhere out there could be a better movie about all those things than this. Like maybe like that Warner Herzog documentary about the Antarctic or something. That really tries its best to explore why human beings do what we do when we explore and stuff like that.
Yeah, or like a movie like Into the Wild, and also
Yeah,
Grizzly Man, also that documentary that Herzog did.
actually, I think Into the Wild might actually be more relevant of a comparison to these films, and at least at least something that's alluded to in Ad Astra about, he was exploring not really because he was looking for something, but because he was running away from something.
mm,
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah.
The more I think about Into the Wild, maybe that's a better one.
But the thing is, this is the father in Ad Astra, right? He was exploring because he was running away from something.
Yeah, that's
And,
what makes
and
it so different, though.
but there's
Uh,
very little of that again in the movie. Like the son himself
Well,
is extremely
it's a different.
passive.
Yeah, but I mean that's what makes it so different. It's a different way to tell that story, to see it all from someone else's point of view and then only get to that conclusion at the end. I'm not saying it's perfect. I thought about that earlier when I was trying to describe the two. I didn't mention it, but I thought about mentioning that it's like a big difference is that whereas Lost City of Zed were pretty much entirely from the main guy's point of view, in Ad Astra, it's extremely different just because we were from
it,
an outside perspective looking in.
well, it's like if Spider-Man from Lost City of Zed didn't go along with his dad, but suddenly he's trying to track his dad down in the middle of the Amazon. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's not a perfect comparison. I know it's just a
But
little bit like
that would
that.
have
It's
been, I
just
mean, that to me would have made Ad Astra better. Yes, if because I think they touch a little bit on why um, Brad Pitt becomes an astronaut,
yeah, I
because
think so.
he's got that talent of like he stays his blood pressure and heartbeat, whatever, he can stay very calm under most stressful situations, and that's like a necessity and all that. And maybe that's in his genetics because it comes from his dad. But there could have been more of an exploration there. Is like, if you really resent your dad and you think that he's a neglectful dad, why do you follow in his footsteps? Why do you even search for him? That's such a rich space, and there's so much to explore there. And I felt like Ad Astra just didn't do it. It did the mechanics. There's a scene, and there's another scene, and there's another scene, and there's another scene, and then eventually we get to the scene where he meets his dad, and there's some sort of like, some lines of dialogue about, oh, the cosmos, and like, okay, you didn't find aliens, but at least like you were searching for them, which is better than nothing. But it doesn't, all those scenes like that are supposed to build and build and build are not building. They're just getting you there physically, cinematically, but they're not actually building a story and like a rising action and climax. It's just not. That's, I think, what's lacking in his movies, is that he's building scenes. He's not building a story. I don't know. It's weird. And I don't know. I really, it's tough for me, but I guess that's my conclusion. And maybe someday I'll revisit Ad Astra. But you think about, if you want to compare Apocalypse Now to Ad Astra, I mean, Apocalypse Now, it's like 9 circles of hell that they go through, and then eventually it's like all about the horror of humanity and war and everything. And then they get to this place, and this guy has lost his fucking mind, and he's taken over this tribe, and it's like just fascinating view of just the dark side of of the human heart of darkness, like the book. um but um but it's just, it's Ad Astra has almost none of that in it. It's got the scenes, but it just doesn't have the story telling aspects. It doesn't have the characters that make up the whatchamacallit, the archetypes, like like in Apocalypse Now is the different personalities on the boat, and then they get there, and there's the camera guy, the photographer, journalist, forgot his name.
either way, we know
Yeah,
who
yeah,
you're
yeah.
talking.
But that famous actor, I forgot him. They passed away a few years ago. In any case, yeah, it's like all these fascinating characters and journey that you go along, and with that Astra and with Lost City of Zed, I feel like it's just them. It's very contained. It's all him. He meets a few interesting indigenous people along the way, and I feel like even they get discounted, you know, to some degree. Like, you think there'd be more interesting characters along the way that, instead of like Robert the Bruce, and it's just like, the only interesting character that he meets along the way is Robert Pattinson, like he's interesting, but then he goes away.
Um,
I
this is gonna sound so repetitive from what I said earlier, but I really feel like I have to say it again. Like, to sum all my thoughts up about these movies, I really agree with a lot of what Gil's saying. Like, especially, I'll just talk about uh, Ad Astra, but because that's what you talked about a lot about right now. But like, it's funny to me because I agree with you. I don't know if you remember when I spoke about them before, when I the last time in the other podcast episode when but like I said, I didn't really love Ad Astra while I was watching it, aside from, of course, the visuals, which are stunning and really just thought provoking and everything. Um, but it's when you get to the end that I thought the movie found its strength, you know. And it's funny to me because I agree with you. I think that more or less, it's the movie is going through the motions to get us to the ending, but at the same time, while I think that's a very valid and very strong criticism of the movie, valid criticism even of the movie, I just think it's so funny that your analysis of the end of the movie is like, and then he gets there with his dad, with Tommy Lee Jones, and they say some stuff about the cosmos, and it's like, yeah, cool. Well, you didn't find aliens, but good on you, because we learned some stuff. And it's like you're describing it so flippantly, and I'm like remembering the movie going like, God, that scene was like so powerful. It was just like, oh man. It's like,
No, because
I
and
agree
you
with
know
you.
what
I
the
just
well,
think that
but
it's
you know
like,
what the irony is? The irony
what?
to me is that we're talking about, especially Lost City of Zed being
Yeah,
the journey is the reward. Meanwhile,
yeah.
James Gray does not make the journey the reward. Like the movies themselves, like the journey, they're well shot, but the story development moment to moment is just not strong. Like it's not, all he wants is to get to the end because he can have his revelation. But revelation to what? This reminds me of the way I saw Blade Runner, that that movie, unlike the sequel, 2049, where the main character is the artificial life. So you go on the journey with him. Where in the original Blade Runner, unless Decker was actually, which there was no proof that he was, doesn't seem like he was, or at least they didn't know. He was a human. So, and the criminals, semi criminals, like the tragic criminals, like were the ones that we're supposed to relate to. That just it's problematic. It's because you're not spending the whole movie exploring what that and relating to that character, to those characters. So that's the issue, and that's what I feel like is the issue with these two movies, the like Z and Ad Astra, is that there's not a lot of development of the characters and story, too much. But are they well shot movies? I won't disagree. They look nice. I rated it a 7 mostly because it looks like a movie. Like it looks it looks good. Like moment to moment, it's a good story. I just wish there was a better storyteller telling it. Then it would have been an 8 or a 9.
I, yeah, I mean, I've got to jump in on this like whole Ad Astra thing, like the ending. I
Do
mean,
it. Do it.
I mean, okay, that exchange of dialogue, like where Tommy Lee Jones is just, I mean, both Tommy Lee Jones and Brad Pitt are playing characters who are pretty much stoic people. Like they are not emotional people, but you can see Tommy Lee Jones like probably being as emotional as this guy has ever been in his life, just talking about how he can't be a failure. And the specific line that Brad Pitt responds to his dad with, like when he's saying, "I can't be a failure," is "You didn't fail. Now we know we're all we've got." And I mean, there is so much in that one line which is, like, okay, you went out looking for something, but you didn't find what you were looking for, but you sure as fuck found something. And like, we went through this hell, but that's what human exploration always has been. It always will be. That's everything that drives us forward. You go through hell looking for something, you don't find it, but you found something else. And even finding nothing is finding something. That's one thing. That's one aspect. That's just kind of on the surface level.
There's
But
more.
of course, there's more. I mean, it's about the human aspect, that his father had lost his entire life, that his son Brad Pitt had been missing his entire life, and realizing that he's been missing his entire life. Is that, there is something at home. There is something
Oh,
to to seeing what's right there in front of you and what you have, rather than looking for rather than abandoning it for the hope of something grander. That there is something to just living your life and loving the people around you. And I mean, that scene had all of that packed into it. That one line had all of that packed into it. And I mean, it's a simple line, but it has all of that packed into it because of the preceding like hour and 45 minutes.
I'm not sure. I mean, I need to revisit it, I guess. But
Okay.
but it didn't seem to me. Yeah. So I'm sure I could be there because I watched it on a plane and it was very small.
oh my!
But
Yeah,
It's such a
that doesn't.
cinematic movie.
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, with
maybe I'll
45
upgrade.
voice.
I'll watch it on my laptop. That will help.
Are you trying to give me a middle finger through your?
Oh no! It's just I pretty much like mostly watch movies on my laptop, unless I'm watching them on the projector with Diana.
You want to give me your projector? I'll give you like $100.
No.
If
We
if you don't watch it, if you don't use it anymore, I could really use it.
I will give it to you if I do want to upgrade the projector, but because it's working, we're just still going with it. It's got an issue. It's got like pink on the left and green on the right, but it works okay. It's just black and white movies look weird
Oh,
on it.
you're really selling me now.
Yeah, but in any case, no, I'll give it to you for free if we ever upgrade it. But in any case, no, but yeah, I mostly watch movies and actually just started watching TV shows on my phone because I have a kickstand now for my phone and I do have a slightly bigger screen now, so I was like, I'm okay with watching TV shows. I started watching The Rings of Power.
Oh,
Which is kind of, it is an epic show to watch that on the phone, but I was like, I'll try to but we watch that on the laptop if I can. But in any case, no, I mean, obviously we have imagination. Ideally, you would want to watch a movie, even a show, on the biggest screen possible. But it's, unfortunately, I would just watch less stuff if I
yeah.
had to sit in front of a projector because I just don't have as much time in the evenings to do that. I watch stuff when I eat lunch. I watch stuff. In
Yeah.
any case, but any last thought on Lost City of Z?
I just felt like throwing it out there to you guys. Do you remember when we long time ago when we recorded the Wrath of Man episode?
Yes.
Mhm.
At the time, we were talking about Guy Ritchie's films, and I had not seen The Gentleman yet. And since then, I believe it's on Netflix. I have seen The Gentleman, and I loved it. Like, and Charlie Hunnam is probably the second biggest character in it after. Well, it's hard to say. It's kind of a tie between him and uh, Matthew McConaughey. The two of them are like really big characters in it, but he's really outstanding in that movie.
That's good.
Yeah,
No,
just
he definitely. I also didn't see him in anything else. I guess he's very big from that TV show, the
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy, which I didn't see, but yeah, no, he was solid. He's got charisma for sure. He definitely was serviceable, but yeah.
Triple Frontier is a pretty good one too. A really under the radar kind of movie.
Yeah, that's funny sometimes when I just really I don't see enough movies or TV shows, especially TV shows, that sometimes I'm like, oh, I guess this guy's a thing.